Hello, this is Elder Tehila from the Coven of the Open Mind, and you're watching Coffeelosophy. Hail and welcome. Topic this time is on spirit guides, beings that shape our practices, that give us guidance, and that help us on our spiritual journeys. For many, this takes the form of animals. So we're going to talk a bit about animals and the symbolism of animals within spirituality and how you can come to incorporate animal symbolism in your own spirituality as well. So grab your coffee and let's get started. I've got a nice cappuccino today because it's very hot, if you can't tell by the flush in my cheeks. Okay, so first of all, what is a spirit guide? A spirit guide pretty much refers to any non-physical or metaphysical being, any entity that is not physically there that guides you in your spiritual practice. For a lot of people, this takes the form of angels, which can be both higher planar beings by their very nature, or it could be the souls of deceased loved ones, which many do also consider to be angels. There's no rules when it comes to having a spirit guide. It's not really like you're talking physically to some external entity. The entity is not really there or conscious in the same way that we are conscious, but having these hypothetical conversations with them, relating to them, feeling their energy, feeling their light, their warmth, whatever you want to call it, helps you to make sense of your own spirituality and your spiritual practices and where you're headed in life, and basically just all the different aspects of your spiritual self, your journey, your identity, all of that. It can be a deceased relative as well. That's very common. So when we talked about death in the previous video, we talked about viewing people's past lives as being like individual drops of water, or individual molecules that come together to form a drop of water in what is essentially like a river of water. When you're talking to spirit guides, you're tapping into that timeless river that is all, if your spirit guides are seen as being deceased loved ones or something like that, then you're tapping into this river and just kind of bringing forth whatever archetypal beings, whatever energies, whatever loved ones help you feel confident in your spiritual practices, help you feel comforted, give you some kind of information. And with spirit guides, the information can come from outside of the self. You're picking up on energies that are outside of your physical body, that are outside of your physical sphere. You're picking up on energies that are timeless themselves. And so you can learn things that are outside of time. So spirit guides can bring you visions of the future. They could bring you visions of the past. They can bring information into your little sphere of awareness, that helps you in some way understand what's going to happen to you or what actions you need to take in order to become a better person. So spirit guides, if you think about it, are really a tool for understanding and interpreting our subconscious selves and how we relate to the metaphysical energies, these big, timeless, spaceless, realityless consciousness that exists that unites all of us. It's very abstract. It doesn't really make sense to humans because we perceive of time and space as being very defined, very limiting. So consciousness that exists outside of these limitations is very hard for us to grasp and to relate to. So when we talk about spirit guides, we're talking about like a tool for tapping in to that awareness in the same way that you might use divination. But now this is not a physical tool. This is a mental tool. This is an emotional tool. This is something that exists inside of us that brings us visions, and possibly in our dreams we talk to spirit guides or see spirit animals. This is like a non-physical tool that you could put in your spiritual toolkit, if you will. So spirit guides are any kind of being. People work with dragons, which are archetypes of natural forces, archetypes of energy, that many consider those to be spirit guides because they don't consider them to be deities. Some people view the spirit guides as being like fairies or versions of the fae, which are the consciousness of the elements. So many perceive of spirit guides as taking those forms, or even just one of those forms. Like if someone is a very airtight person, then maybe they only work with conventional fairies like that fly around. Some people's spirit guides take the form of animals. That is very common. So we're going to hone in on talking about animals for a second and put the whole spirit guide thing aside and talk about what an inner animal is, a spirit animal, some people call it. There's a lot of different terms. A lot of different cultures use this. You find it in shamanism. You find it pretty much all over the world. It's pretty ancient for people to have like a totem animal, right? That's shamanic in origin, and there's forms of shamanism all over the world, and people would relate to that animal. And you see it in like the Chinese zodiac, how they have animals, and they have like the year of the pig or the year of the ox or whatever. I don't follow all that personally, but it's very cool stuff. And it's neat how you can see the importance of animals throughout all of these other cultures. How we relate to the beings that cohabitate our world tend to be that's something that tends to be very important to us. Many people feel like they have an archetypal energy that closely aligns with a particular animal. Some people will feel like a bird, and in their dreams they're often flying, and they feel like they're high above the air, and maybe they are light on their feet. Some people are super clumsy on land, and then when they get in the water they're very sleek, and maybe they'll identify with penguin or with some kind of water animal, and they'll just be like, well, I'm just an undine in my core, and they can't get out. These are the types that don't get out of the pool, So there's a lot of different types of people, and everyone relates to like having some kind of animal archetypal energy differently. People also sometimes have multiple inner animals. For some people, having an inner animal is just that. It's like, this is the archetypal energy found within nature that I relate to the most. And people use animals over things like trees or rocks because animals are animated, and so they have more in common with humans in how they experience existence. I don't even think I want to go there. It's hot. So many view their inner animal as being like, okay, this is just who I am. This is an expression of myself. And many people view the animal as being an external being that is more like a guide that will come in their dreams and show them which way to walk, and they'll find themselves like in a maze or something, and the animal will lead them by this event and lead them by that event and lead them down all these different ways until they wind up in some new location, and the animal has taught them a lesson in the process. People don't always relate to inner animals or spirit animals in the same way, and that's okay. It's not like these things physically exist. They are kind of like imaginary friends in a way, because they only exist in the subconscious self. They exist in the imagination. They're a form of what is essentially self-delusion, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not like it's not like you think they're real. It's not like you're physically seeing them. People don't believe that they are birds, that they can jump off of cliffs and fly. That's not what anyone here is saying when they say my inner animal is, a dove or something. All they're saying is that these are the qualities that I encompass, that define who I am. And thinking about that helps me to know more about who I am and why this is the way I am, and influence myself in ways that are beneficial for me and, for my life. Okay. So having spirit animals, having an inner animal, having a spirit guide, the purpose of it is really to improve yourself, improve your life, and be the best person that you can be. And if having a relationship with these external forms of consciousness helps you do that, then you'll want to develop a relationship with a spirit guide or find your inner animal. And through that understanding, through that archetype, through that energy, you can better understand yourself and your relation to the world. And that's the goal of spirituality, right? The goal is to improve how you relate to the world. It's to help you live in harmony with yourself and with the world around you. How do you know if you have a guide or if you have an inner animal? Well, I'll say pretty much everyone has an inner animal. It's more about finding it than picking one. It's not something you just sit down and decide. You don't get to choose the animal you think is the coolest. Look back to our ego video and put your ego aside and know, like, oh, this is just what I'm like. Sometimes people don't like the animal they see when they look out into the nature and when they look out into the mirror here. And I just think that reflects that you don't like yourself. You can change qualities of yourself. You can become another animal in time if you change enough. For instance, my mom, I once was like, you're just like a raccoon. Because she collects moments. She collects things and moments and people, and she just collects them. And she likes shiny, glittery things. But there are times where she doesn't know when to quit, and she won't, like raccoons will reach into a trap and they'll find something glittery and grab it. But then if their hand is stuck, they won't let go of the glittery thing in order to remove their hand out. And you could call that greed. But I think that it's really something different. I think that it's really just this, not wanting to give up on something. So she doesn't give up on things. Never. She does not give up on things. So her inner animal's a raccoon. I told her that, and she was like, I don't want to be a raccoon. Why would I want to be a raccoon? And I don't even know her reasons why she didn't want to be a raccoon, but she just didn't. And then in recent years, she's changed a lot. And now I feel like she's got another inner animal. So as people grow and change, the animal can shift as well. But, we've spoken about it more recently, and she's like, I can see why you think I'm like a raccoon, because I do. I collect things. And I was like, yeah. That's what raccoons do. They collect things. Meditation helps you find your inner animal a lot. Getting into an altered state of mind, particularly if like you're a watery type of person or you're a fiery type of person, you could get into an altered state of mind or like do some kind of meditation that involves the element. Sit and look at a fire, sit next to a creek and meditate. And then that might help you identify what the animal is. I think most people probably identify their spirit guides and inner animals in dreams or from visions. Often it'll correlate with if you work with a particular deity or if you have a particular element. It's usually all related. So most people are not going to be like a fiery type of person, but then be a watery type of animal. If you are a very spiritual person and you are like a born medium and you pick up on death energy everywhere you go, then you're probably more likely to have human-esque spirit guides than animal guides, because you'll just tap into death energy and just work with the energy of dead humans, basically. So that's all about how to know if you have spirit guides. You'll know if you have spirit guides because you'll hear them in your mind's ears. You'll see them in your mind's eye. They'll be around when you sleep. They'll be around when you zone out when you feel like you're in trouble and you need some advice, you won't feel quite as alone as you would feel otherwise, because you'll kind of like feel like someone's there with you. So that's how you know if you have them and if you're working with them. If you want to develop working with them, kind of start meditating and let yourself get into an imaginative state of mind, where you can just kind of say, this is my animal, this is my friend now. And that can be hard for some people because our society teaches you that imaginary friends are a waste of time, and that they're for kids. But I think that there's a lot of power in the imagination. And it's very important that you can tap into your inner self and tap into the part of you that is, beyond reality, that can just make anything real. And that when you can tap into that at will, but at the same time, it doesn't rule you, it doesn't own you, you're still perfectly 100% aware of objective reality, then, what's the harm in it? What's the harm in relating to subconscious things and understanding your deeper self in terms of archetypes of any kind, So even if the idea of animals doesn't sound right and you do want to use trees or rocks or something else, then do it, okay? There are people who take the name like amethyst or something because that's the archetypal energy that they relate to, and they're like, I want to be named this. Now, a familiar is like a spirit guide made physical. So a familiar is when your animal friend is actually a physical animal, and they help you on your spiritual path, and they guide you on your spiritual path, and they help you like be a more spiritual, enlightened person. You're talking about an animal who you will subconsciously understand. It's like basically you're the same person, but they're separate. And you can read each other's thoughts. And this animal, this guide, this familiar, is going to be ever present in your life. You're not going to want to be apart from them. You usually find them because you're feeling extreme compulsion. It's not like you're just like, it'd be nice to have a dog, and you go to the shelter and you find the nicest dog and you pick out a dog and you go into the yard with several dogs and you find the one you connect to and then you go home, right? Okay, that's just shopping. When you have a familiar waiting for you out there, you are just like, I need this dog, okay? It's just like, you absolutely need it. And you just know, this is the time, I have to go. So my dog is my familiar, my dog Frank. You'll probably have seen him in some of the videos. He's the puggle, and he's just me, okay? So I'm gonna die one day and come back as my dog. And I have learned so much about spirituality and myself and my spirituality as well. So spirituality in general and my personal path has been advanced because I know this creature, because he's in my life. He is incredibly evolved for a dog. He is like a human in dog form, and he understands full sentences, and he just gets it, and he loves magic. For me, it just feels like we have such a bond. We can't be separated, and I don't know how else to explain it. When I knew it was time to get my dog, I just was like, I need a dog right now. And so I went to the shelter, and the shelter was like, no, you need to do this whole process. And I was like, no, I'm supposed to have a dog today. I'm supposed to have a dog now. I was like, that's not right. So that's not how I'm supposed to get my dog. So then I went on Craigslist, and I just sent an email to like every single person who was advertising a dog. And the one person who got back to me was like, yeah, why don't you come out and meet him? I came out to meet Frank, and he came out of the house, and I just was like, this is my dog. Here he is. I found him. Frank has been my dog ever since, and we just speak the same language. We just are meant to be. And so that compulsion, that need to have the dog, and then, just emailing every single person like, are you my dog? Are you my dog? Are you my dog? One of you is going to be my dog. I know it. And the one person who got back to me, of course, that was the dog. I have other dogs, and I love them very dearly, but we are not bound in the same way. The other two dogs I have found me. They were rescues, essentially. But they are, and the way I found them is very magical, and I love them. But we don't have the same bond. My husband's familiar is a cat, so we were just moved into this new house, and we were like, you know what, there's mice, so why don't we go out and just get a cat, because even just having one, the smell of a cat usually will scare away mice and stuff, and we're pretty clean people, so, it's not like our house is a mess for mice to run around in, so just having a cat would be enough. Turns out she is a mouser, and she loves chasing mice, which is perfect. Go figure. But we're like, let's just go get a cat. We want a cat. And then all of a sudden he was like, oh my God, I need a cat. And we didn't have a car at the time, so we had to ask someone for a ride to the shelter. And they were like, are you crazy? We're moving today. This is so much to add on to moving into a new house and fixing it up. Fixing up a new house is a lot of work. Why are you getting a cat? But he was just like, I'm going to take the bus. I'm going to walk if I have to. I will walk 4 hours if I have to. I have to go to this particular shelter. I just know it. And then he turns to me and he's like, what do you think we should name the cat? So of course I'm like, well, I don't know. We have to meet the cat first, probably. They might even have a name. How do we know? And then in my head, just the name Shelly popped up. And I was like, we can't name the cat Shelly. That was the name of our ex-landlady. And it was like, I don't know about that. So I didn't say anything. But then we go to the shelter and we walk in. And in the middle of the room, there's this cat. And I'm like, this cat looks vaguely familiar. Why is that? And my husband he starts walking around looking at all the cats. And I just see that cage in the center and I walk right over and I'm just like, her name is Shelly. And I just was like, oh, this is our cat. This is her right here. So, and this is his familiar, the cat. So I was able to recognize because I'm an empath, so I can pick up on his energy, and I just knew that was his cat. Shelly is wonderful. She's the perfect cat. She's older. She's got all kinds of issues that we put up with, but she is our cat. And she is Ogun's familiar, and it was very obvious, and he felt very compelled to go and get her. And that's what it feels like when you do have a familiar. Now, I have some questions to answer. One of them is, can a familiar be a family pet? Yes and no. If everyone in the family bonds with the animal in the same way, and that animal is just like everyone's animal, basically, then probably that's not a familiar. Your familiar has like a special bond with just you that they won't have with other people in your household. They may get along with them and love on them and stuff like that. Frank loves his daddy, but he can't be without his mommy. He'll just die. If Frank and I are separated, both of us just we don't do well with that. It can be someone that is seen to be a family pet by the whole family, but familiars really, honestly, aren't pets. They're more like companions. They feel more like equals than pets. Obviously you still have to feed them and take care of them because, could you imagine a dog going in and buying his own groceries? That's silly, but they're not like pets. Like, you don't feel a sense of ownership. You feel a sense of unity, like they are giving back to you as much as you are giving back to them and taking care of them. So familiars are not even really pets. They can be seen as being pets by other people of the household. If they have that bond with you specifically, then they're your familiar. So Shelly is my friend too, and she sits on my lap and all sorts of things. But does she like me as much as she likes her daddy? No. It's his arm she sleeps in every night, and she follows him from room to room, and whenever she feels like he needs to do more magic, she'll go up on the altar and start knocking stuff around until he comes over and puts stuff down on the altar, and that's her way of being like, come on, do magic. Someone asked if you can have different spirit animals at different stages of your life. Absolutely. You can have multiple spirit animals. You can have multiple spirit guides. They can change over life. They can seem to take on a new form. Remember, they're really kind of like imaginary beings. They metaphysically exist. They spiritually exist, but in a timeless way that doesn't make sense to humans. So we make sense of them by giving them characteristics, like personification, essentially. It's not like there are any rules. You can have multiple ones, you can have different ones at different times in your life. When I was a child, I had a Doberman spirit guide. Now I have Frank, and he's my familiar, so I don't really work with spirit guides outside of just having Frank anymore. People have said they've had multiple familiars. You definitely can have different familiars at different times of your life. I have a friend whose familiar is a rat, and rats don't live very long. So she'll get a new rat every like 5 or 6 years, and every time her familiar is a rat, but every rat is very unique and has a different personality. So it's not like it's the same rat. Rat is her spirit animal, so her familiar is always a rat. I don't know if I'll have another familiar after Frank. We'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do after Frank. So that's 10 years off at least, hopefully, God willing. So I'm just trying to think about it. So you'll just slowly over time realize like, oh, well, maybe I'm meant to work with some other animal now, or maybe I have both, so I'm part Phoenix. I've been Phoenix inner animal from a very young age. There's a lot of qualities that I possess that are very bird-like. I think I talk about it in detail in other videos. But as I started to become more grounded and work on being grounded, which is something I really struggled with, I found that I had a second animal that was purely, of this plane, and that's a dog. So sometimes I am the epitome of bird, and I'm very hot and harsh, and I break people down into nothing and then build them up from the ashes like Phoenix would. But then I also have a lot of dog-like qualities where I just don't care about anything and go peacefully through life, and I just want to sniff the air and roll in the grass and just be happy. And that's a large part of who I am now as well. So because I'm dynamic and I have these multiple states of being, I have multiple animals. So that's common. Lots of people do identify with multiple animals. Most of the time, the animals are of this plane of existence. People who are who have smaller egos, or like who are kind of enlightened or awakened, they might have fantastical creatures. Most people who think that they are in that state of being are not. The ego is a nasty thing sometimes. So see our first video on the ego. But most people have animals from this plane of existence. And it's not like one is better than another. It's just who you are, and who you are is exactly who you are supposed to be. So why would you want to be anyone else? You have different familiars, different animals, different guides at different phases of your life. That's completely normal and expected. The way you get in touch with them is through meditation and doing certain activities like hiking or walking barefoot or sitting by a fire, listening to water, just being somewhere that brings you a sense of, this is who I am, this is who I'm meant to be, I'm in touch with the world around me, I'm in touch with myself. When you feel like that, often then you'll start to get a sense for, yes, this is the kind of animal I am, or what. Remember, it's not the animal you like the most. It's not the animal you think is the coolest. It's just the one that captures your energy best. Keep that in mind. Try to put the ego aside and really ask yourself, is this who I am, or is this who I wish I was, when you're trying to decide what your inner animal is, or whether or not you have spirit guides that you work with. I think that's pretty much all the content. That's all the questions I have. This is probably a shorter video than the other ones, and that's okay. If you have any more questions, please put them in the comments, shoot us an email, join our Crossroads. It's on our website, covenantoftheopenmind.com/crossroads, and you can always talk to us there and tell us your stories and tell us how you came to find your inner animal, or talk about what you think your inner animal is. That's the whole point of our community, is to give people a space to explore these things together with other people and talk it over, so that you're not just saying, is this my animal, or is this my ego, right? It helps when you have people to talk to and run it by, essentially. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. From everyone here at the Covenant of the Open Mind, blessed be.